Hey everybody, Max Boltman here alongside the Athletics' Corey Promman and Scott Wheeler and FloHockey's Chris Peters for another episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. We are coming to you live 2 days before the 2026 NHL Draft, one day after one of the wildest trade days I can remember, and that was going to have a big impact on this year's NHL Draft. Just a reminder, we are doing a draft show this year. The Athletic is teaming up with FloHockey. You can join us here on YouTube for the entire first round of the NHL Draft on Friday. That's June 26th, 7 p.m. ET. We'll also be live the next day, immediately following the draft to recap everything. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube so you don't miss it. But we're going to have a lot to talk about, fellas, both today and on that show because of all the action that went down on Tuesday. Let's start with the last of the trades, the one that broke Tuesday night. The Chicago Blackhawks trading the 4th pick, the 45th pick, and Louis Crevier to the Buffalo Sabres for Bowen Byram and Jordan Greenway. Corey, this is a whopper because the top 5 picks simply do not change hands.
No, and there's a lot to discuss about this trade, but the first thing that struck me is kind of doing reporting about this in the aftermath is I think one of the major contributing variables to this is that Chicago was hoping to get a forward at 4th overall. That was, I think, a big driver of this trade. And I believe they made this trade because they looked at Chase Reed, looked at Carson Karls, and they thought we'd rather just get Bowen Byram. He's a few years ahead. He can play now, help our power play now. But I think they believed that Gavin McKenna is going 1, and that Ivar Stenberg and Caleb Malhotra were going 2 and 3 in some order. And, those have been things that we have not taken as guarantees. I know that's how Scott just mocked it in his projection yesterday. And if I was doing a projection, that's how I would have it. But I don't, you don't know other teams' lists. I don't think Chicago knows the other teams' list. So that's interesting assumptions to make. And, and I presume it's how it's going to go on Friday. But if it doesn't go that way, all of a sudden this trade looks even more interesting before we even litigate whether, the quality of Byram, who you could have taken it for, the cap space, the roster construction. I'll just be really interested to see whether the first 3 players on Friday are indeed those 3 forwards. And not to mention you could litigate whether those are the correct 3 forwards.
In texting some people last night, came away with the exact same takeaway as Corey here. I think the decision to move William Eklund was the strongest signal yet that the Sharks are planning to take Ivar Stenberg second, and the acquisition of the number 9 pick and the assumption that one of those big 5D is still going to be there, I think positions the Sharks to get exactly what they want out of this draft and take a forward in Ivar Stenberg at number 2 and then a defenseman at number 9. And I think that prompted the Chicago Blackhawks to circle back on Bowen Byram and say, all right, it's go time. If we're not going to land Stenberg here, which I think was their sort of best case scenario, the guy that they would have liked to have gotten it for, if it was clear to them or they felt that the Sharks weren't going to take a defenseman at number 2, that I think prompted the second move or the third big move of the day in the Byram trade.
Yeah, 2 highly related trades to each other. So the William Eklund piece of this.
And might I say, Scott, I am never, ever, ever releasing my final mock draft on Wednesday. We're going to be a Thursday mock draft moving forward here.
I don't know. I really enjoyed the updates. I liked the updates throughout the day, Scott. I'm sure I had more fun with that than you did. The 2 related trades, though. William Eklund goes from the Sharks. And this was something, by the way, that Sharks fans had been adamant about that, frankly, I was skeptical they were going to be able to swing. The idea of trading William Eklund for a top defense prospect. They don't trade him for a top defense prospect, but they trade Eklund to the Ottawa Senators for a package that is built around the number 9 pick that Ottawa just got back in the Brady Tkachuk trade from Florida. So that the 2 related trades as we talk about Bowen Byram, but let's stay with Byram, Chris. I think the key question everyone's going to ask about this is it's the bird in the hand versus what could the 4th overall pick be, right? It's Bowen Byram, who was a 4th overall pick defenseman. You kind of know what he is. He's in his prime already right now, which I can see the appeal to for Chicago. On the other hand, they're going to have to pay him a big contract in a year, and you're losing some years that you would have gotten on this young player they would have picked at 4th.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, it's an overpay, and just I think we all kind of would say that there's too much in terms of the assets spent. But I would say also The other thing that strikes me is Mike Greer said that number 2 pick was the one that he had received a ton of calls on, and I would bet you that Chicago was one of the teams calling on that pick because of the presence of Stenberg. That I think that he definitely was a guy that they were going to want. So failing that, now all of a sudden you go and you say, okay, none of these defensemen that we're looking at are going to be ready next year. They're not going to be ready the year after, potentially. If it's Chase Reed, maybe not, maybe he needs even more time. So you're saying, all right, we've got Connor Bedard. We're in our a window where we need to start competing, because you look at that roster today and it's not real good. I don't think it got a lot better. It is better, absolutely, because Bowen Byram is a better defenseman than anybody that they had at this present moment. It's a move for now, but he's never proven that he can be a number 1 defenseman in the NHL, and that's essentially what you are giving away. I think the timeline is important, so you understand that they're trying to go a little bit further here, but the thing that was kind of shocking to me was, okay, it's the 4th overall, it's 45th overall. And it's
45 too is
like 45. There's value. There's value in that pick, and it's Byram and Greenway. And so I think if you're going to move that pick, and the fact that it wasn't moved potentially for a winger or somebody that could help Connor Bedard up front, that's one thing. I do think Bowen Byram makes them better offensively, but this team couldn't defend last year, and they did not get a very good defender. So I mean, that's the other thing that I think kind of strikes me about this deal. I think, this is a massive risk, I believe, that they've taken. And the 4th overall, the options that were going to be available to them were not going to help them immediately enough. And they have a very deep prospect system, but there's still a lot of unknowns. And I feel like even adding Bowen Byram to the mix is yet another unknown into the process here.
I do think that they're just playing devil's advocate. I do think there's some offensive ceiling to Bowen Byram that is still untapped here. Like, he's going to play PP1. He insulates Sam Rinzel and Arty Levshunov, who were clearly not ready to play PP1. And everybody threw around yesterday the career high 42 points. Well, the career high 42 points came with about a minute of power play time per game on average last season. He might be playing 3.5 minutes per average on the power play now. I think 50 points is in play for him, and if he can prove that he can defend at a decent level in those kinds of minutes, in the 23, 24 minutes, and let's not forget, like, he was playing with Owen Power 22, 23 minutes a night in the playoffs this year in tough matchups. Now, the results weren't always good. They weren't always strong in sort of difficult defensive matchups, but I do think, like, that 40 points is not the floor here that we're talking about with Byram. If he can stay healthy, if he's running PP1 with Connor Bedard, he's a very, very talented player. He's confident. He plays an aggressive style offensively. And I think he's really going to sort of juice a lot of offense from the back end for that group and play in a role that he's never played in to this point. I'm sure there will be some highs and lows with him in that kind of a role. But I think, like, you up the PP minutes, there's some runway here for him to have a really big year.
I mean,
The challenge with that is that then you have to pay him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dynamo. I think, like, his skating's like off the charts good, and like that's kind of what Chicago has tended to target in their defensemen and forwards too, is just high end skating, and he has that in bunches. He's got a really good skill level. He's, very creative and intelligent with the puck. Like, there's a lot of traits there that are really exciting. He's not that big, and he definitely tries to score more than he does try to defend at times, but he's not small either. Like, there's a lot of things about his game that's really exciting, and the production has been there despite not having the prime opportunity on the power play there in Buffalo. Like, he's an excellent player. I think the question we're all going to have on Chicago was the price, and from an outsider perspective, it definitely feels like somebody had a conversation with someone that said it's time to get better, and it's time to get better right now, because otherwise this kind of feels like we're trying to accelerate a 31st place team into something a little bit more relevant. And I think with Byram, you mentioned Bedard, Anton Frundell, I could see being on the first power play unit next year. I think Kanserov will be really good for them next year. This could be a very exciting and there could be a lot more skill on this team. Are they a better team? We'll see, because I still think even with the addition of Byram, that blue line is still a question. You're still waiting to see if you're getting anything out of Korchinski. You're still waiting to see where Levshunov is next year. And obviously now you lost Crevier, who I think the internet overrates a little bit, but he was a fine, depth, useful defenseman for them. So we'll see. I think they are better. Are they a playoff team though next year? As it stands right now, that would be rich for me right now.
No
It's a
chance.
72-point team last year, and while Byram helps, like this is still a young blue line. I mean, Bowen Byram's going to have to be the wise veteran here for this group. When you talk
At
about
25.
That's right, at 25 years old. When you talk about Levshinov, Vlasic, Rinzel, Wyatt Kaiser, if Korchinski's in the mix, like Bowen Byram is the one who's been there, done that, and so he's going to be the number 1D there, and certainly it's good opportunity for him. He hasn't had that opportunity being behind Makar, being behind Rasmus Dahlin to be the guy, but he's going right into those waters. Let's talk about another defense trade here now. Simon Nemec going from New Jersey, another team that had a lot of young defensemen on it. They trade him to Calgary. I think this is interesting from both angles here, Scott. So I'm curious which one stands out more to you. Is it the Calgary Flames kind of stepping on the accelerator, using draft picks to take a young defenseman in Simon Nemec, who's, again, going to get paid here? Or is it the New Jersey Devils side trading him away, and what are they loading up ammo for?
Well, I think the Devils side was expected. Like that ship felt like it had sailed kind of midway through last year, if not prior to that, where Sheldon Keefe just couldn't figure out how to use them. They've got a number of young defensemen that they're incorporating. Luke Hughes is trying to take a step, and it just felt like Simon Nemec was taking a back seat. And I'm sure Simon feels when every time he shows up and plays excellent hockey for the Slovak national team and is on their power play one, he probably feels really good about himself and feels like he should be playing a more prominent role in the NHL. And that role just maybe wasn't there for him in New Jersey. I like the move if you're the Calgary Flames, if only because they didn't expend the kind of capital. Now, multiple first-round picks is multiple first-round picks, but in Vegas and Colorado, they're going to be late first-round picks. So they've still retained their 6th overall selection. They've still retained Zane Parekh. They've still retained kind of the Cole Reshnies and the pieces that they've invested real capital in, and they still have, moving forward, their own first-round picks long-term. So I liked it from that perspective. Like, if you're the Calgary Flames, you've got quantity in your pool. You can live with not having those 2 late first-round picks. Now you add Simon Nemec, you've got Zane Parekh, maybe you take a defenseman, whether it's Keaton Verhoff or Carson Karls here. Suddenly you've got 3 excellent defensemen potentially to build around. Maybe you take a Vigo Bjork. Maybe this frees you up a little bit to take a Vigo Bjork. I do worry a little bit about what it's going to look like to watch Zane Parekh and Simon Nemec in a top 4 defend long-term and in hard playoff hockey, if that's the step that they eventually want to take. But you've got your 2 power play guys of the future there in those 2. And I think that is exciting. Like, they're going to be a more entertaining brand of hockey in Calgary moving forward here.
What stands out to me about this trade is, Nemec is a good player. He's had some ups and downs, but he's a good player. He's a legit NHL defenseman. He's going to help Calgary. Is he a number 2 overall pick caliber player? Probably not, but he's not that far off. He's a top 4 defenseman, I think, long term. When we often have draft discussions and we talk about need versus BPA, best player available, we often, get into these really good discussions about who is the best player, and if a team has a lot of excess in one position, how do all these players fit together? And I feel like with New Jersey, you kind of saw this coming, right? Like we saw when they signed Dougie Hamilton, the power play guy. Then they draft Luke Hughes 4th overall. He's a power play guy. Then, what was it? A year or 2 later, they draft Nemec. He's a power play guy. The people who always say take best player available say just get all the assets and then trade them. But what happens here is you got too many of one player type, and arguably you devalued Nemec because he didn't get to play on the power play. He doesn't put up the production. And now you have this 6-0 defenseman who's a 20, 30 point guy, and his value is not high enough to trade. So I think these are the kind of, the lines that people have to walk a little bit. And it's something that I think, you look at Buffalo, who's going to be staring Chase Reed at 4. Now, if he's the clear best player available, that's one thing. But I think it's going to be hard to say just draft Reed and trade Power or trade Reed or something like that. It doesn't always work out the way you think it's going to work out.
Well, but interestingly, isn't that what San Jose and Buffalo both did yesterday, right? Like San Jose's kind of over-leveraged on young forwards, and they trade away William Eklund. They get back the 9th pick that they can use to take their D. And, Buffalo, you could argue, just did that with Byram.
My point is more that I think San Jose did that at the opportune time. They did that before Stenberg comes in and Eklund starts going down the lineup, and before Will Smith and Cheryshev start taking his ice time. The issue was in Nemec is there was kind of like this window where we thought this Nemec might get traded. This is not a new thing. We thought for years that he was potentially going to get traded, and it kind of feels like if they do this 2 years ago, they probably get more in return. And I'm not sure that they got really any new information about Nemec in the 2 years since then.
Chicago put themselves in the exact same bind, taking Rinzel, Korchinski, and Levshunov back to back too, right? Like it has put Korchinski in a sticky spot, both in their lineup and from now a trade value standpoint, if they want to move on from Kevin. So there is something to that. And frankly, if we look back on this era of the Blackhawks and they never find the winger for Connor Bedard, we're going to circle back on Ivan Demidov and the decision to take Levshunov, even if they had Levshunov number 2 on their list. So it is a dangerous game to sort of take. If you're constantly taking the best player available and that best player available is constantly at the same position, you can end up in a difficult spot.
All right, let's go to the other side of the Eklund deal now in Ottawa. And, they do well to get a young player in Eklund, but it's such a drastic shift in, I feel like, identity that the Ottawa Senators undergo inevitably when you lose a guy like Brady Tkachuk. But Eklund's such a different player from there. And now you start looking at their lineup, and it does start to become more about kind of speed and skill than I think kind of the toughness that I've come to associate with the Senators. Corey.
Yeah, and I think they're still a good team now. I think there's been some chatter online that Eklund's a equal or superior player to Brady Tkachuk. I kind of think that's nonsense, but he's a really good player.
Who said that?
There was like some like wins or puck replacements, like stats being posted that he has like a higher WAR over the last 2 years than Brady did or something like that.
Okay.
Exactly. But I mean, Eklund's a good player, and I like this Ottawa team still. I like them with Eklund on their team. Yes, they lose a really unique player in Brady, who's an off the charts competitor with N, who has the size and physicality to go with the skill. That's hard to find, but I still think, I mean, it's been something I've said about Ottawa for years. As long as they get goaltending, I think they're fine. Or it could even be like good next year. The roster definitely takes a mild step back, but I don't think it's a substantial step back. Like, I still think it's a very good team. Like, Tim Stützle is a star. Jake Sanderson's a star. They've got some good depth scoring throughout the lineup. You got to imagine Yakimchuk's pushing in the next year or two to join the lineup. So, like, they're going to get the lineup will be good. Is it great? I don't know, but I think this is still a team that could contend for the playoffs.
I think the center depth, you go Stützle, Cousins, Pinto, that's pretty enviable in terms of
I still think Pinto
core.
has another level here too.
Yeah.
All right. One more big trade yesterday. Jordan Kyrou going. This is another one. I don't think anyone's surprised to see Jordan Kyrou get traded. Maybe a bit surprised, though, Scott, at just how much he returned, right? When you talk about the 16th overall pick, Connor McMichael, Milton Gastrin, they got a haul for Jordan Kyrou.
And when was the last time a team made 4 first-round selections? Now, I'm not convinced that the St. Louis Blues on Friday will actually make 4 first-round selections, but they now own 11, 15, 16, and 29, I believe it is. So they're in a pretty unique spot now. The challenge that I think the Blues now face is if they can't swing a deal to package some of those picks, whether it's to move up or to acquire another player that helps them, I do worry about a sort of quantity over quality situation happening there. Like, we all like Jimmy Snuggerud and Justin Carbonneau and Adam Jiricek and Theo Lindstein and Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, like all good players, good pieces of the puzzle. Jake Neighbors, good players. But you're adding potentially 4 more players who kind of look like that, and you're still missing that star. Now, there's a case to be made that Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou weren't even that level of player, that they were never going to be that sort of true star that takes you from a sort of a good playoff floor into a contending window. But it still feels like they're almost like they're drafting future Jordan Kyrous and future Robert. So that part of it is tricky for me. Like, I just don't know what the path for, unless you can leverage those 4 picks or a couple of those picks and one of the prospects to go out and find that guy, I don't know what the Blues look like moving forward here. And it doesn't feel like they're a team that's prepared to tank and pick in the top 5 and find that player that way either. So it's an interesting spot as an organization.
Kyrou just had like a career worst season too. Like it's in what they got back for him, as a
McMichael's
winger
a good player too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the same amount of points last year.
Yeah. Now Kyrou's a way better skater, but other than that, like to echo Max's point, I'm surprised. I think Gastron's a real prospect too. Like I think he's going to be a bottom 6-4 in the NHL. Yep. Could even be like a third liner. Like he checks a lot of boxes. Like that was a haul, I thought, considering the context of Kyrou's situation.
Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway for me was how much Jordan Kyrou brought back. Because yes, he's had some 70-point seasons, multiple 30-goal seasons. That's a really good player, but it's just again, are you getting the best version of Jordan Kyrou? Or are you putting him in the positions to succeed? And now losing a pick in the mid-teens for a group that, let's face it, like the Washington Capitals window is continually closing. I mean, it feels almost closed, and knowing that the Ovechkin factor is still going to hang over this organization's head. Not having a pick in the teens even feels like it's, potentially going to have some long-term effects. But I do think I'm kind of intrigued by what we're seeing in the NHL right now, where it's like picks, prospects, let's get some guys that can help us right now. I kind of like the instant gratification nature of the NHL because look at what it's brought forth for some of these other teams that have had trade pieces be significant pieces. I mean, Kelly McCrimmon's saying everybody kind of hates us because we win all the time. Well, it's because they trade all the time too, and they don't have any preciousness about their prospects. They don't care. There's zero emotion tied to any of these decisions, and they don't overvalue their pieces that much. And so that makes this player movement a little bit more palatable for teams. And they're saying, okay, well, if we can get better now, but these prices are definitely, there's sticker shock for sure on some of these prices relative to the returns.
Washington still has a pick at 18, mind you. One thing that stands out to me on a depth chart level too for Washington is they acquire Kyrou, who's a wing. Look at all of their drafts. So Ivan Mirostichenko, Ryan Leonard, Lyndon Lakovic, Tarek Parashchek, Andrew Cristall. This is a really they've got a lot of wingers that they've used premium assets because basically they just turn another first round pick into another wing.
They trade Michael, who can play center.
Yeah,
and Gastron.
Where are your centers coming from? Where's your defense coming from? I will be very surprised if that 19th pick is not a center or a defenseman, and it's probably going to be a center when you look at how the talent's probably going to line up.
Yeah, and you're getting into the lower tiers of the draft in both positions at that point too.
Does Tynan Lawrence get there?
I don't think Lawrence or Command get there. So I think you're looking at like Suvanto and Morozov and Dejanay and those types.
Yeah, I'm not even sure Suvanto will be there. So,
and I'm not even sure Dejanay is a center.
To your point, though, Chris, I mean, this is obviously being influenced by the lack of free agent market too. I mean, I think that there's the example setting of Carolina, Vegas, Florida, all really aggressive teams in trades the last couple seasons and willing to part with future capital. But a big part of it is you just can't go to free agency on July 1 and expect to find a player anymore with the way the cap is set up, with the way the free agent class is developing. If you want to get better, you have to trade picks, and to some extent, teams are going to have to get comfortable accepting futures. I don't know that we've saw a ton of obvious rebuilders over the last 18 months in the NHL, but it's just the best you're going to do if you're someone who has to trade a player.
Yeah, no question. That's a huge factor, Max. Like I think that the fact that free agency is dud after dud, year after year now, you do have to get creative in how you're going to find these players. And you look at some of these rebuilding teams, like Chicago in particular, they have been for years now just stockpiling, and they've got quantity, they do have quality, they've got a little bit of everything, but they still have a lot of guys that aren't going to help you now. And so that pressure is ramping up on these teams. And I think when you look at both San Jose and Chicago in particular, they're looking at their top guys, Bedard and Celebrini, and saying, how do we have to be very aggressive in how we support these guys, because their peaks are coming now. Like, their best years are going to be in these next, 4, 5, 6 probably. And so you need to have that window protected with current players. And it's not coming through free agency. I mean, how many mistakes are going to be made in free agency with the lack of quality just because the market dictates the player makes that much money, and then you've made a years-long mistake. It happens all the time. So I think we'll continue to see an aggressive trade market in the NHL, and I don't think we're done in this week. I think, we're going to finish recording this, and there'll probably be a move or two more, and then plenty on draft day as well. So hey, it's exciting.
I do. Before we get to the draft here, I do want to just go back, Corey. I sensed that you think Louis Crevier is a little overrated here. I am shocked to hear that. 6'8", great skater, 100-mile-an-hour shot. I thought you of all people would love this guy.
I saw Scott interacting with somebody yesterday who said he's better than Byram. So that's like,
all right. Well,
yeah.
okay. I retract. That would be overrating. Crevier is a nice player. That was
I think
okay.
Random guy on the internet, but hey, tape measure, Corey, the tape measure and the scale, pretty good here. Pretty good.
He's a good player. I think his puck play is a problem, but I think the skating for the size is intriguing. He's an NHL defenseman.
And
physical.
He was an NHL defenseman on one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year. Like, what is he on a good team, right? He's a 6'7".
Yeah.
He's a 6'7".
I think he's going to be very nice in Buffalo. I think he's a very nice fit in Buffalo.
He'll replace Logan Stanley in the press box.
He'll replace Logan Stanley on the ice. He'll be their third pair right D. I really think so. All right, let's go to the draft here. So much of a shakeup now. We talked about St. Louis has half the first round at this point. We talked about why we think Chicago likely made this move with number 4 to get out of number 4. The 4 doesn't get there. What are the ripples of all this movement, though, now, Corey? Because we all of a sudden have an extremely different looking first half of the first round.
Well, I think, we made this point earlier about San Jose. I really like how they navigate this draft class, because if they had Stenberg at 2, which I don't know if they do, but let's just say they had Stenberg at 2, but they think it's really close, which I do believe they had a defenseman in the conversation at 2 that they really liked a lot. But their preference is Stenberg. You look at this draft class and you say, it's not like a really top-heavy draft class, but it's a deep top 8, top 10. And the teams that are picking 6 to 10, I think, in this draft are really happy because they're going to get a really good player and the decisions are going to be made in front of them. So San Jose just kind of gets right into the mix of that. And they say, we're going to get a really good defenseman. It may not be our number 1 defenseman, but I don't know if the difference between the number 1 and the number 5 or number 6 defenseman in this draft is all that different.
Right.
So they're going to walk away with a really exciting forward who's going to be on their top 6, maybe even top power play this season, and a really, great defense prospect that's going to come into their system and probably be in their team in a couple of years. Now, in the case of Buffalo, I'm not sure how this helps them, short term, but Max, I know talking to you beforehand, you got to keep in mind that Rasmus Dahlin is already in his prime. Owen Power has been good. He hasn't been great. So let's say they go the direction of a Chase Reed at 4. Reed's probably doing 1, if not 2 years at school. Who knows how Buffalo looks in 2 or 3 years from now. Maybe Power develops some more offense. Maybe he doesn't. But if Reed's an elite prospect and he's elite young defensemen are really hard to come by. And I know it doesn't help them short term, but I feel like over the long term, getting a player like that can help you stay competitive for a very long time, as opposed to, they had a nice run this past spring. Maybe next, you do another year or two, then it kind of falls off where you got to start paying people.
Yeah, Dahlin's like 8-9 years older than the player that they'll pick at 4, if they pick at 4.
If they take Reed at 4 or Carson Karls or whoever, name your defenseman in that range, and you're Radim Mertka sitting at home, I think you get real uneasy about your status within the organization. And Radim has already, first of all, he didn't have a great year. Second of all, he's already been rumored in trades. Like, I think he's probably not long for there if they take a D there, especially a right shot.
I feel like he probably should have been uneasy when he had 1 goal this season. That was probably the first indicator.
I get your point, though, Scott. It's an interesting question because I think one of the natural questions you see this trade is is Buffalo going to flip the 4th pick for something? The other option is Buffalo makes the 4th pick and flips guys like Mertka, flips this stable up. They have a deep core. They have more forward prospects than they can play.
I did have someone text me right away last night too after that trade happened, saying that they think that Buffalo may flip the 4th pick. So we're not done here.
Yeah. Well, what was that? The first time a top 5 pick was traded in like 15 years, something like that. It'd be
So we're gonna see
quite
it
something.
twice in a week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if it
I was
happens
gonna
twice a
say.
week, but like also, yeah, we also didn't expect it to go for a probably not number 1 defenseman. So like, like it's just this whole thing is crazy. But now in terms of how this does shake up the draft, I mean, now if you're sitting there, you're thinking, if we think that the first 3 players off the board are going to be forwards, if you're locking in Malhotra into into Vancouver, which I'm not sure we can do, but I think Stenberg's lack of availability likely there probably just pushes that right into Malhotra territory. Now you've got some real intrigue in the next few picks, because we'll see what Buffalo does, but I'm more interested in seeing which of the defensemen at that point, if it is a defenseman or if it is Vigo Bjork, that New York is going to take at 5. I mean, like the fact that what we've been talking about all this time was, what is San Jose really going to do with that number 2 pick? And they basically telegraphed it to the world here, which has then precipitated a massive trade, which just goes to show you how much I think, there was some hope that Chicago was going to be able to land Stenberg at that spot. So now you have all these other things kind of compounding. So I think we're getting a better sense now of what the top 5 looks like. I have no clue what Buffalo should or can do in that pick, in terms of where they go. I think Corey's onto it with the defense, if that's the case, but my goodness.
Is it
it's
inconceivable
crazy.
now that the 4, I'm not saying it will happen, but is it inconceivable that the first 4 picks could be forwards?
No.
Yeah, not inconceivable at all. I mean,
Would Bjork? I mean, like, I think you're talking about Bjork, Scott, right?
Yep.
Would Bjork be redundant to Oslin, Benson, Hellenius? I mean, there's some similar profile. I mean, Bjork might be the best of those. He probably is,
Yeah.
but
I think Carolina's playoff run's going to help that argument a little bit. But I get what you're saying. But I think there's a talent delta there between Reed and Bjork. I'm not sure what Buffalo thinks. But I think with Bjork, the compete is just so special that like I think he's like really a 6'0" guy who just kind of looks small.
yeah, and in the TS, go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, to your point of, is it redundant? Well, in theory, they would like Vigo Bjork for all the same reasons that they liked Noah Östlund and Zach Benson as well, too, right?
yeah, no, very true.
And in the TSN poll that I did with Craig Button, Bjork was ahead of Malhotra on that final list, which I guess it didn't necessarily surprise me, because I felt like the winds were blowing in Bjork's direction over the last few weeks, coming out of the World Championship, coming out of the Combine. But like there is the opinions of the player are there's definitely people out there that'll say 5'9" center, no thank you at that range. But there are a lot more teams that seem more comfortable with that player. And I do think that Logan Stankoven's playoff run has a little bit to do with that too.
Passing on Reed at 4 would be, something that could age poorly, because I kind of feel like this is a pretty special talent.
Yeah.
And like I get the appeal of Bjork, but like Reed kind of checks every box, and he's a guy who I think, when you talk to scouts, Chris, you say this is somebody who some scouts have all the way up at number 1 overall,
Yes.
or 2. And like I said, I mean, it's close enough that I don't think it's unreasonable to take Bjork, but that would be one where, like I said, you better be sure.
They don't have righties. Like all the D they have are on the left side. I get there's like the power play argument, and then are those spots kind of spoken for somewhat? Certainly, I think Reed has a very good case to take power play too within a few years, though. And there's the age gap, there's the handedness gap. Like I think he slots in. I think he would be a very nice puzzle piece there. I want to ask you guys about the San Jose pick though, because my first thought, and Scott, I think you mocked to them Daxon Rudolph. I think that's the ideal outcome here for San Jose when you get that type of player. And I think even on that survey that you did with the scouts, Scott, where you had them rank the top group of D 1 to 5. There were people who had a Rudolph 5, but there were people who really liked Rudolph as well. Like that could be a great outcome for them. My only question is, does Rudolph even get there?
I think there's a good chance that Rudolph still gets there. That you're right. The part of the survey that sort of showed us that he was first and second on some boards was the surprising part, but he was also 5th on the most boards. So I think that speaks to where the consensus kind of is at on Rudolph. There are some people who still have him fifth in that group, and he has turned some others into some big believers with his offensive potential and his offensive ceiling. I think for San Jose, he kind of fits like a glove. He's a righty to Dickinson's lefty. He can run the power play if you don't believe that Sam Dickinson's going to be your PP1 guy of the future, which I think it feels like the winds are blowing that way. He's still got size. I think he would be an excellent outcome if you're the Sharks. And it still feels to me, based off of all of the conversations I've had and the survey, it still feels to me like the Karls, Reed, Smits, Verhoff are more likely than not going to be in some order, the first 4D taken. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion, but if I were placing the betting odds, I would still have Rudolph as the fifth guy on draft day.
I guess my point is, what if all 5 of them are gone in the top 8 picks? I don't think, like, Bjork, if he goes at 4, that's one thing, right? And he certainly has potential homes, right? Like we talked about Calgary, Winnipeg needs a center. Yeah, exactly. There's homes there. But would it be inconceivable if all 5 of those are gone in the top 8, Corey?
No, I think that's a very realistic scenario. I think Bjork, everybody likes Bjork. I think all those teams have a lot of passion for Bjork, but I definitely could see a scenario where he's their second or their third favorite, where they can say, but not an elite skater. Yeah, but 5'9", and they just have a higher projection on one of those defensemen.
Which would be an interesting. I mean, I guess Gustafson's not a bad consolation prize. I just mean, like, I defaulted to Rudolph, and when I saw it on your mock, Scott, I was like, "Yep, this is probably how San Jose would draw it up, right?" But it's possible that Gustafson is the best D remaining at that point, and there's some rhyme with Dickinson.
And I think Gustafson's better than Rudolph.
All right, well, there you go. So it wouldn't be a problem for Corey then in San Jose's shoes. Okay, let's talk about a couple. Any other kind of slide candidates here? Like you talked about kind of the path for Bjork. We don't think he's going to fall too late. I feel like he's probably going top 10 no matter what here. But is there anyone who maybe the public would be surprised to see could go a little bit later, Corey?
I think Lawrence is probably one. That would be one that stands out to me. I think both of those Swedish wingers, Hermansson, Nordmark, wouldn't surprise me if they go in a little later than people expected, because I think their compete worries people. Mm-hmm. I keep seeing Preston mocked in first rounds. I'd really be surprised if that happens, quite frankly. I'm trying to think what else. Am I missing anybody obvious, guys? Like problem kids, guys who had bad second halves. Anything obvious that I'm forgetting here?
I think Villeneuve.
Villeneuve
probably, if not even 50-50 to go first round. Like I think Villeneuve's going in the second round.
Yeah. I feel like people are presuming Tommy Blale's for sure going first round. I would not take that as a guarantee just because of the 5'11" defenseman factor. I think people are presuming the Rucks are going in the first round. I would not presume that. Just getting towards the draft, I think I get the sense teams are scared of the Rucks more than they're excited about the Rucks, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure to take both of them together. Yep. Because they're so intertwined with each other as human beings, and they just committed down to the same college together. They've never been apart from each other for more than a few days, and so you need to have the right assets in the right spots in the draft. There's only so few teams that can execute that. So like if I could see one going like at the end, but it wouldn't surprise me if both are available on day 2.
How about the other side of that, Chris? Anyone who you think goes higher than people are prepared to see him go?
I was thinking for a bit Wyatt Cullen. I'm starting to not think that as much. I think he's probably going to go in the range that a lot of people have kind of projected him in. In that somewhere in that, it really probably is like that 9 to 13 range, 9 to 15 range even for Wyatt Cullen. I do think Blale's going in the first. I think he's for sure going to go in the first. We'll see if those teams are going to be there in the end. But yeah, I think that's one where I feel pretty confident that he could. And then beyond that, I think we'll have to wait and see. Command is probably the other guy that I'm looking at as a guy who just has a ton of fans in the scouting community right now. He's probably still that right outside of that tier of players, like those 13 players, which I would include Lawrence in, that are potentially going to go. And if guys like Lawrence slide, like Command is a natural guy to potentially move up in that scenario.
I could see command like 11, 12, 13,
Yep,
14.
for
Like
sure.
that's in play for him.
So potentially above Lawrence.
Potentially.
Wouldn't
And
surprise
that
me.
would contribute to this. That's part of what I think is, like contributing to the slide is that there are teams that are just starting to like guys better. So
Yeah. My last mock draft, I'm going to have command going before Lawrence.
All right. And Corey, you were just speaking of kind of late risers. I mean, one of the events that sometimes can produce those late risers is the Dan Milstein Gold Star Camp, which he's an agent. He represents a lot of Russian players, and that's a dilemma for teams scouting Russia the last several years. There just hasn't been that many opportunities for good live viewings. It's a very specific environment, like it's an agent camp kind of thing. But you were able to attend it. Like anything interesting come out of that?
Yeah, it's a unique camp because, like you said, it's an agent-run camp, so they obviously want to put their guys in the best positions to succeed. But because of the unique variables in Russia, they continue to get a lot of really good Russians. The camps look almost like a World Junior camp, quite frankly, this year. Every team was in attendance and often running deep with the amount of people they had in attendance. And one thing that's usually very interesting is, a lot of the measurements we get on players for Russians in particular, but sometimes other Europeans are unofficial. They get officially confirmed at the combine, but we don't have the official ones for Russians. So Gleb Pugachev confirmed at 6'3". He was unofficially 6'3". And Nikita Sherbakov, the defenseman, kind of what we thought was like a high mid 2. He was unofficially 6'3", officially comes in at 6'5". Laver Gashalov, who was kind of a second, third round guy, I think, for us, was unofficially 6'3", officially comes in at 5'11". So those are things those are things that could, move the needle a little bit. Definitely got the sense that Pugachev is well loved in the league. Klepov was officially measured at 6'0". He was unofficially 6'0", so that didn't change. Pugachev, I definitely think there's some love in the league. Like he reminds me a lot of Lawson Krause at the same age. Now he's a Russian Lawson Krause, so that's maybe a distinction there in terms of his range, but definitely get the sense there's a lot of interest in him.
I believe Klepov would have been measured at the CHL USA, but it is noteworthy.
And the OHL game.
Yeah, it is noteworthy that they didn't go this year. Like typically the true top Russians have still gone to the combine, especially the ones that are playing in North America. Even in recent years with everything happening in Ukraine, the North American Russians have typically still gone. This year, Klepov and Barabanov, who I expect would have been a part of that 80 to 90 player list for the combine, just didn't go. Like they just said, we're going to go to the Gold Star camp and that's going to be our combine. And we're not going to participate in the events in Buffalo, which was an interesting ripple to it this year.
Yep.
Also, Dmitry Borachev, one of the top goalie prospects, unofficially 6'3", measured and officially at 6'2". Still, good height, but, inches matter when it comes to goalies. Could that take him off from being like maybe the first, second goalie, maybe more the third, fourth, fifth goalie? We'll see on Friday, Saturday.
All right, and then one last bit. This is not 2026 draft related, but 2027 draft of high importance to that class. Landon DuPont, multiple reports this afternoon as we talk on Wednesday that he could be headed to the University of Michigan. Scott, this is obviously a big college hockey thing, but we can even talk about it in the context of DuPont and the opportunity that he'll have now to showcase himself in his draft year.
Yeah, it's a hand-to-glove fit, honestly. A year ago, the big question mark, especially after Henry Muse, who had an excellent start, frankly, at Michigan, went down with his injury, was sort of who's going to move pucks, who's going to make plays. Dakota Room-Mullen can move pucks, but there were a lot of big questions about that blue line. I think it was a surprise for some around college hockey when they went to the Frozen Four with the blue line that they had. Now, suddenly, you've got Henry Muse coming back from injury. You've recruited Cameron Reed, a 19-year-old first-round pick who will likely be a returnee for Team Canada at the World Juniors and just won a Memorial Cup as the captain of the Kitchener Rangers. And you've added Landon DuPont, and suddenly you've got three really capable puck movers on that back end, and three guys who are sort of legit NHL prospects on that back end, on top of the forwards that we typically expect them to have. And I think Landon and head coach Brandon Naurato and the system that they play, the style of play that they play, I just think is a really great fit. Like they want their D active in the rush, they want their D involved in offense, they want to be making plays, and that's the style I imagine that Landon wants to be playing in his draft year. So they'll be a very compelling team. They're going to be a very popular team for NHL scouts, and Michigan now has the pressure of trying to make another run with a bunch of teenagers while everybody else does it with older lineups. And that's kind of been their MO to mixed results. And this team is as talented as any in terms of first round picks and all of that. And they've got a really, really interesting group now.
Speaking of which, Michigan plays Denver in a series in October, who also have young players this year, but they have built their teams a little differently. That should be a really exciting series, though, in October.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube, especially in advance of our live show during the draft on Friday, June 26th, 7 p.m. ET here on YouTube. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell to stay informed and catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the meantime, you can join our Discord community. We'll see you there.